Welcome in, everybody, to the first episode of the Legislative Lounge. We will be your host here for the foregoing future. My name is Nate. This is Professor Mike. And we just wanted to come on here and create this podcast where we can just speak to the people about the realities of what's going on in our government, what's going on in our local levels, and honestly, how these big tech companies are censoring us on a daily basis through our means of social media and all forms of communication, honestly. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been on social media for a few years now. I think Nate and I have had almost 100 accounts at point, and on TikTok especially, where censorship is pretty rampant. And it brings us into our main topic, which is media censorship.
Absolutely. So for my side, I mean, I've been on TikTok for quite a while, and honestly, that's where me and Mike got started. It's one of those platforms where we just, at first we were able to express ourselves freely without any kind of interaction from the actual app itself or people being able to mass report us, and the information that we were able to provide, it allowed us to amass a huge following of people in a very short amount of time just because of what me and Mike do. We're not individuals that just kind of go off of what the media tells us. We don't watch Fox. We don't watch CNN. We don't watch all these news networks because a lot of the times they're not telling the truth anyways. So what we do is we get into the actual legislation. We get into the actual documents. We go to the governmental sites and we read the documentation that's right there and it has access to everybody. And we just explain it to people because honestly, a lot of people just, sorry to say, are too lazy to go do it themselves and really make a true informed decision in regards to elections and, just being able to relay the message of what's going on our governmental site. So right now, what we're going to talk, what Mike was just talking about is we want to get into the, big tech censorship. A lot of these platforms right now are really honing in because, especially on election cycles, they like to target individuals that might have a different opinion of what they believe and whatever their higher ups are trying to relay to them and what they're paid for, basically. Mike, you want to go into that?
Yeah, when it comes to the social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, it mainly concerns their funders, right? So, and you also have governmental agencies that may push a little pressure on these entities, like for instance, Metaverse, which is in Instagram. They are pressured heavily by the Department of Justice and the Biden-Harris administration, and you can see this with our clip coming up. So this
Absolutely.
was
And
a congressional testimony given by Mark Zuckerberg.
right. And, a lot of the times, especially like this has to do with COVID-19 specifically, but I mean, even before that, in the 2020 election, we continuously seen it. But the problem is that they've done nothing about it either. There's nowhere on a federal or even at a state level outside of Texas that is actually even trying to combat this because honestly, our First Amendment free speech is being taken away. Like we can't express ourselves on a way that, we feel. And honestly, I think that's wrong in a lot of ways.
Well, I mean, it really detracts from the free exchange of ideas, which is what our founders were all about, with the conception of the great nation on the planet. And
Mhm.
these platforms, they are impeding that free exchange. And like you said, Texas is the only state in the union that I've found that has any type of bills that are trying to be pushed that'll kind of rein these social media companies in.
Right. And then what's even funnier about that is not only are they trying to protect your and I's free speech, those that are higher up. A lot of the Democrat side of the aisle, honestly, is the ones that's actually trying to prevent this bill. It's basically gridlocked in the court system at this moment, so it's really gone nowhere. I mean, it's a bill that's been out there for quite a while, and we're going to get a little bit into the details of it so that way you guys can understand because we believe that this is a type of bill that should be done federally, honestly. And I believe that there was talks about one, but it never actually came to fruition. So, Mike, go ahead and give us a little detail on this bill.
Yeah, I can honestly see Ted Cruz sponsoring a bill like this, and through federal legislation. But HB 20. So this comes out of Texas, as Nate was saying, and starting out, it states that every person in Texas is entitled to the free exchange of ideas and information, i.e., free speech. And Texas, being the great state it is, will protect free speech. You can see that in the first couple paragraphs. But what I really wanted to highlight, because this kind of goes in through the conduct of these social media platforms, it defines what a social media platform is. Um, so I wanted to highlight is here section 143 alpha 0.002, where it kind of goes into detail on how censorship by these social media platforms is prohibited unless whereas unless it violates federal law, i.e., the Constitution, right? So if your free speech or exchange of ideas is deliberately inciting violence, that is breaking federal law. Okay. So that's highlighted in, like I said, section 143 alpha 0.002 and 0.006. And more interesting about this bill is described in section 143.007, and basically that describes is if a user can prove that a social media company is violating this bill, if it were to be made law, then the user is entitled to damages, and that can be financial compensation, right? And that's really something that'll get these social media platforms in line. And I do hope that we see something on the federal side of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the problem is that a lot of these companies, which I find it crazy that a lot of these private companies, especially social media, they actually don't have to follow the Constitution, which just is a wild concept to me, honestly, because it's like if they're working within the United States, you would have to be with the cognitive ability to understand the Constitution and how we work. You would think that we would have companies having to actually abide by our civil liberties. However, a simple Google search, which honestly, Google is what it is, but a simple Google search will even tell you, do companies have to actually abide by civil liberties? And it directly tells you no. And it's just a wild concept. I have no understanding of how companies can just, honestly just violate the constitutional rights of individuals, but yet they're able to operate in America.
Well, I think it's how they identify these private entities, these social media platforms, whether or not they're identifying as a simple post, like a publisher, or if they're identifying as a platform for um, media, like media collaboration, right? So
Absolutely.
when you're a publisher, then that gives you full rights into the editing of what your platform is producing, right? That's why
Mhm.
Facebook's allowed to do that. But then you get into entities like YouTube and Twitch and Rumble and TikTok. These are broadcasts for individual publishers, and there's a lot of legal context that is forgotten and looked over by the masses when it comes to mass censorship. And what they're doing is violating their own policies by censoring individuals
Mhm.
that are honestly making them money.
So, I personally have had a couple Facebook accounts, and both of us combined have had nearly 200 TikTok accounts taken down. And the arbitrary outlines of guideline violations just seems to not be consistent at the same time, right? Seems like if you're of a certain logic or belief, those same entities or those same violation guidelines, I should say, aren't applied across the board. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think. I mean, you see it across even in our following list. Like every day, I go through my following list just to see. who on TikTok that I follow who's gotten banned, and there are hundreds of accounts, right? Hundreds of conservative or constitutionalist, center right, right leaning, very few left leaning accounts because they toe that line.
Right. And I've seen, oh, I'm sorry.
And we see it every day, the censorship. And like you said, I've had almost 100 accounts on TikTok, and I'm continuously being shadow banned or censored or taken out completely. And I just talk about the Constitution and legislation just like you.
Absolutely. I mean, we bring events. So I have done several videos, specifically on TikTok, where I'm literally showing data. I'm showing articles. I'm using news clippings that are on the TV, and my videos will go down for misinformation, election interference, and civil liberties, and all these nonsensical, just confusing outline of guidelines that they don't even seem to be consistent with. And now the trend is TikTok is just hitting you with a community guideline violation, not even telling you what it is, but hey, your video is down. And see, that's being promoted by a particular side of the aisle, and even if they don't want to say it. But the problem is we do have them actually coming out and saying it. We have numerous governmental positions. I'm trying to be a little bit more understanding here, because with YouTube, they like to do the same thing. There are people in governmental positions that just want to eliminate your free speech, and they've openly spoken about it. I mean, we've shown with the Mark Zuckerberg that he's finally admitting to something that we've known for years, and we are trying to combat it. But yet we're considered conspiracy theorists. We're considered, just nut jobs and people just out of our minds, not living in reality for some reason.
Yeah, and like you said, there's plenty of examples of people in high echelons of governmental positions that are openly stating that censorship needs to happen. What they need to control what information gets broadcasted to the masses, because if they don't control that, then they lose control.
And see, that's the thing, is that we have so many people on these platforms as well. Like, we can show you proof, and we're about to show you proof that these people in government are literally calling for the censorship of information being spread. But we have people out here in these TikTok streets, is how we name it, saying that no, there isn't. That it's as if they have their head in the sand and not paying attention to what our leaders, quote unquote, are doing and saying at a level that can affect our everyday lives. So I'm going to play a clip right now real quick, just to show everybody that's out there saying, no, there's nobody actually trying to limit your speech, and they're not trying to censor on social media. Well, Hillary Clinton has a different point of view, I guess.
Platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. And it's not just the social and psychological effects, it's real harm.
That's kind of the point, Miss Clinton, is that the fact that we shouldn't be controlled in what we say. The First Amendment is very clear in regards to us being able to express ourselves freely.
I mean, the founders of this country were incredibly intelligent, and they knew that, steps like this could be taken. And it was, actions like this that led to their revolt against the powers that be before the United States became, the greatest superpower in the world. And it's pretty telling. And you see this quite a bit on the Democrat side of the aisle. And don't get us wrong, we will call out both sides.
Oh, you will see it many times on this.
And,
for sure. I mean,
we've gotten hate all over TikTok for calling out Republicans. I thought you're Republican. And I am a registered Republican, but that doesn't mean I'm going to go along with every single thing that's read. I'm going to call out the BS. I'm going to comb through the legislation and see the unnecessary.
Absolutely. I mean, because there's the old saying, everybody's always heard it, is the two wings of the same bird. And that honestly couldn't be more truer of most people in Congress, for example. I mean, a lot of the times they're doing backdoor deals anyways. They put on a good show in front of everybody on the cameras, make it say, "Oh no, they're the bad guys. No, they're the bad guys." But in all reality, they're shaking hands, they're getting coffee and making sure that their pockets are lined just correctly. Or else, if that wasn't the case, you would see a lot of these people, honestly, calling out each other in regards to a lot of the shady stuff that they do in Congress, like insider trading and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, there. I would love to be a fly on the wall during the 3 a.m. meetings that they have during the congressional legislation, and because I bet the talks are a lot more different than what's broadcasted to us. What's broadcasted to us is a lot of divisiveness and animosity between the two parties.
Mhm.
And I think that is what is causing the major detriment to American society, is that political divisiveness. Like, it used to be um, divisiveness based on sports teams, but you could still get along. Politics was kind of a hush hush topic. Like, it's a private thing. But now politics has become just like sports teams.
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy to me to think that we are sitting here voting for the same people over and over again when we know that they are absolutely not doing what's in the best interest of the people that that they represent. That they are only doing this to gain power, gain influence, gain money, honestly, in a lot of times. So it's crazy to me to see these people continuously being voted in, and yet seeing so many people, complaining, talking about how nobody in the government cares about us, but yet they'll continuously vote for these people.
Yeah, it makes me hopeful of the future, because you and I have seen it. Like, even though we've been taken down off social media several times, we have opened the eyes to a lot of individuals, and have caused a little bit of a shift. I won't say a big shift, but we have caused a little bit of a shift and opened some eyes to people that are now paying attention, that are not
Mhm.
that are going on Congress.gov, that are actually looking at the data, that are going on the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, that are going on the Department of Justice. They're
Yeah,
looking
and
at
I
the
mean,
facts.
yeah, and this part of the censorship, honestly, is not conveying the accurate information to the American people. It goes farther than just social media platforms, even though that's the main topic that we're talking about. But censorship, in my mind, as well, is not being transparent with the American people. They're censoring what they say so that way it doesn't confuse the American people, because honestly, they treat most Americans as if they're ignorant. They don't know what's going on, and they want it that way. Why? Because they can create more influence and get what they want done rather than what the American people want done. So, but at this, I mean, it's just crazy to me to see we have had lifelong, I mean, even at the state level, we have had lifelong congressmen, congresswomen that have been there 40, 50 plus years doing the same stuff, censoring the information to the American people, and then they don't care about us wanting to actually speak out on it on social media, to the point where they put these media companies in check. But sure enough, if the oil companies or the manufacturing companies aren't just doing exactly what they like, well, here comes another bill to make sure that they're in alignment with what we're wanting them to do.
Yeah, I think you and I were talking the other day about local governments, and it's quite amazing how even in Arizona, because this is where I live in Arizona, and when it comes to censorship, it's either they will censor you or they won't respond to you at all.
Mhm.
And I've tried to create a lot of noise about Proposition 139 in Arizona. And it's not really specifically what we're talking about today, but none of the Democrat leadership, none of the Democrat representatives in this Arizona will engage with anyone in opposition of Proposition 139. And then you have, forms of social media that are censoring any type of analytics when it comes to that legislation. So,
For sure. For sure. And I mean, a lot of people, and see, the problem is that, people don't understand the difference between the United States, the actual states themselves are the ones that actually control what the federal government does and not vice versa. Like, we've got some comments in here that I'm just not in alignment with, stating that the United States government should regulate more. Well, honestly, if you do more regulation, which is honestly another form of censorship in all reality, is the fact that they cost more to push past these regulations for these companies, which causes increase in prices. So I mean, censorship goes far beyond just not being able to convey information the way that you want, regardless of how somebody else feels about it. It can stem into a lot of different areas that affects your pocketbook as well.
it can affect your pocketbook. It can affect your health. There's plenty of times where you and I have been censored, even in a live stream, and we start talking about health and the FDA and the food industry, and what should be looked at and what should be deregulated.
And the crazy thing about that, the whole deregulation, is that my wife, who is a nutritionist in her own right and does books and writes different health guidelines, like she has a book of the European Standard Guidelines, which outlines how the FDA does very little to, if any, actual regulation of our food products, and not realizing that there is over 1,000 different chemicals, ingredients that we use and consume on a daily basis that are banned in other countries. But when she goes onto Facebook or Instagram or anywhere else and tries to convey this information to help you with your health, her posts are removed for misinformation, even though she's using the actual FDA website, the NIH website, our health experts. It's crazy.
And that actually gets me kind of really excited for a certain Kennedy that may or may not be in leadership.
Absolutely. And I mean, I can't wait for that, because I know my wife is excited about it. I mean, he's going to definitely be a part of a board that's going to overhaul the FDA and make sure that they actually aren't poisoning us, because
I
in
mean,
all reality, that's what they are.
how old is that man? Like 60, 70, somewhere around there?
He's like 63 or so. Yeah.
Yeah. Still benching 225 on an incline.
He looked better than both of us almost. Well, better than me.
And that just shows you like what the human body can do when you start taking out all the BS in your diet. And it's amazing what can get censored, and it's amazing what won't get censored. If you say anything against Donald Trump, you will get broadcasted all over the internet, and you will get positive back and positive views. If you say anything against Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, anybody on the left side of the aisle, you'll get censored. You'll get taken down for hate speech. If you even provide a legitimate analysis of that legislation, i.e., we'll give it an example, the abortion law in Minnesota by Tim Walz. If you provide any type of in-depth analysis of that legislation, taken down for hate speech.
Or misinformation, which is hilarious, because we're reading right from the actual documents themselves. I'm like, I don't know how it could be misinformation when I literally got a green screen of the bill itself in my background, and all I'm doing is reading it.
But it makes you wonder, who's the moderators?
It's crazy. Honestly, like the way they set up their algorithm, I honestly, most of the time, I don't even think they have somebody looking at the information or looking at what's actually being posted. And that's part of the problem. They have literally designed an algorithm to pick up on specific items that they deem themselves as misinformation.
Now it's gotten so bad that I can't even comment. I can't make
Oh,
a
I know.
single comment on TikTok.
I know. Like every time I mean, obviously I'm very tricky because I've learned how to actually use the comment section now. So I've got about a 98% success rate, even though literally 100% of my comments go down. But it's crazy to say that if you put a puke emoji, just a puke emoji, no context, no nothing, just put a puke emoji or a clown emoji, no context, no nothing, gone, and you lose the appeal.
Yeah, I made a comment and I said, "Wow, the TDS is real." Gone, flagged.
hmm And I mean, we've got we've got a question, or I mean, a comment here where they were talking about privately owned companies, and that's part of the problem here. That's what we want to talk about, is that the fact that we find it absolutely absurd that privately owned companies here in the United States do not have to abide by your civil liberties. However, we also see a contradictory uh, judicial system in that regards as well, because at the same time, how many times have we seen where a bakery or somebody like that is being sued all the way up to the Supreme Court because they didn't want to bake a cake for a homosexual couple? Like, that is absolutely insane to me, how hypocritical our judicial system can be, saying that, oh, well, these people are literally quieting me, not allowing me to say what I want to say, even though they claim in their actual terms and conditions, all that this is a free speech platform, blah blah blah. But yet you've got companies out here being sued because they just don't want to provide their business.
Well, the issue is addressing that comment that you brought up is the way you get around this is by not using privately owned companies. Well, the problem is the community guidelines. There are no proper legal definitions behind what they're flagging you for, or what they're establishing as guideline violations. For example, hate speech. They don't properly identify or define what hate speech is. It's
Very
simply
arbitrary.
it's simply subjective, and it's based on the moderator. I could post, and I've done it. I've had multiple accounts. I posted the same video on both accounts. One got flagged for hate speech, and the other got flagged for something completely different.
Or
And
or you have a video where it's the same situation where I've had it, where I posted on two accounts. One gets taken down and the other stays on and goes viral.
yeah,
It's the absolute inconsistency of it, and this same individual saying, "So how do you solve this? You solve this by making these companies follow the Constitution. It's not that hard."
you establish legislation just like HB 20 coming out of Texas. You make them define their terms within their terms and agreements, right? They can censor. I see no issue censoring conduct or content if it violates federal law. It violates United States code, right?
Or the
And
civil liberties of individuals.
so, like, there should be no limitation on the free exchange of ideas as long as it is not a violation of federal law.
Absolutely. And, a lot of people are talking about like that would require government interference. And honestly, no, it wouldn't. Oh, it wouldn't, because it would be enforced by the executive side of things and upheld by the judicial system. Because, like I said, there's a hypocritical movement within our judicial system. And I just outlined how. And in the sense that the civil liberties of people start with the freedom of speech and then goes into all everything else. And for example, a bakery not baking a wedding cake for a gay couple or lesbian couple is being sued and losing it sometimes. And it's just crazy to me.
Mhm. Um, here's something for you. if anybody would like to look this up, Texas v. Johnson says protected speech, right? Burning the American flag is protected speech. Now, let me show you critical. If you were to burn a rainbow flag, you can be thrown in jail because that is a hate speech. It is a discriminatory behavior. And in states like California, they can imprison you. Hypocritical. How can I burn the American flag, and that's considered protected, protected speech, but I can't burn the rainbow flag, for example? Not saying that I would burn either, but it's just hypocritical on its face.
Absolutely. And this is why we say, censorship just goes beyond just the understanding of us expressing ourselves on social media. It's in all forms of fashion. Do we agree with burning the flag? Absolutely not. Mike is a retired military, and I'm a military brat. So we absolutely take the flag in high regard. But unfortunately, even though we don't agree with it, it's their freedom to do with it what they will. And that should be applied across the board is our entire point, is that we see too many times where the inconsistencies of not only, guideline violations on social media, but in our judicial system, in our legislative branch, on how they operate with bills and whatnot. And then also the application through the executive branch and how they're actually charging people and bringing false claims and all this other nonsense against individuals when in all reality, the same situation could be happening to somebody else with a different political ideology, and they're perfectly fine.
Yeah, it comes down to those those backdoor dealings and fundings and political affiliations, and you see it all over. Especially in the most recent cases with a certain political candidate. You see it all over.
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah,
and I mean when it comes into what we're going to talk about in our next episode, it extends even into that. Is the fact that the whole system of how our voting is set up is being censored from top to bottom. I
I
mean,
I
go
bet
ahead.
you. I want to make a prediction because I've been pretty good about my predictions, and I'm willing to bet episode 2 of this amazing podcast might be demonetized on for the next topic,
Absolutely. I
especially
mean,
this close.
but that's the whole entire point of this is I don't care if we're going to be monetized or not. My point is trying to get out to the people in any way, shape, or form that we can to provide them the information, because we're still sitting here saying there are millions of people still sitting out here saying that there was no fraud. Yet we've got cases in Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas, Michigan, Ohio, states that weren't even a part of the swing state, where we're finding massive amounts of individuals that should not be on the voter rolls, or the whole ordeal back in May with Fulton County, Georgia. It's
But
wild.
and if you talk about it, you're censored.
Absolutely.
You're gone.
So for the next, I want all of y'all to come back for the next episode, because that we're going to be going a little bit longer. This was our first episode, so we thank you guys all for coming out. But the next episode is definitely going to be one that's going to be a little bit more in depth with the upcoming election and how we see, and we're going to provide information and proof of these cases that we're talking about of censorship being applied even in our elections.
Yeah. So our next episode is going to be covering alleged election interference, voting, alleged voter fraud. You like how I put that in there, Nate? And we're going to be covering not just the swing states where a lot of this is occurring, but that is happening on Friday, same time, 7 p.m. Central Time. And if you haven't already, please follow the Legislative Lounge at the Legislative Lounge on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Rumble, Twitch, and we hope to see you back.